Today's episode of Music Business Facts is brought to you by Audible, and Audible is the company if you want to get into audiobooks. They have a ton of awesome audiobooks across sci-fi, history, health, bios, comedy, action, romance, and business, just to name a few categories. Right now I'm listening to Total Recall, the Arnold Schwarzenegger biography, and what a ripper that one is. Anyhow, if you'd like to check out Audible, you'll also get a free book when you sign up today, and I'll get a small commission if you sign up using my affiliate link. So go and check out mbfbook.com. Do yourself a favour, invest in your own education or your own entertainment, and check out www.mbfbook.com today.
You know, there's so many different channels that artists can use these days, all of their social medias, whether that be Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Be on everything, be active with everything, engage with your fans. I mean, at the moment, artists have now got more options than ever before to be connecting directly with their audience. And it's just about staying on top of all of those things. You know, find your audience and then develop them. You can do it yourselves.
Welcome to the Music Business Facts Podcast, where successful music industry experts share their industry secrets that will help you take your music career to the next level.
G'day ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 107 of the Music Business Facts Podcast. I'm Rodney Holder, and if you don't know, I played in and managed a metal band called Alchemist for over 20 years. I was also the co-owner, producer and promoter of Australia's largest and longest running metal festival, which was called Metal for the Brain. And I've also been a music business lecturer now for 18 years. Time is going quickly. Anyhow, my entire mission with this show is to speak with as many music industry experts as I possibly can so that I can learn and teach you guys about how the music business works, because it's changing every day. Anyhow, my guest today is Mr. Tony Boden. And Tony is a UK booking agent. He's a promoter and he's also the head of European touring at arteryglobal.com. Now, Artery Global are a company who look after an enormous roster of artists from all over the globe. And go and check them out. Go and check out some of the bands that they're looking at. Anyhow, recently I was able to sit down and have a one-on-one with Tony at the Big Sound Conference. And I was able to get some great insights into his experiences and his thoughts and his opinions on the music business. I thought it was a pretty great conversation. I hope you'll enjoy it. Anyhow, in the episode, we talk about being a booking agent, how you became a booking agent, what you guys might want to have to do if you want to become one, concert promotion and being a concert promoter and all the risky factors you'll face as a promoter. After all, the concert promoters of the music industry are referred to as the gamblers of the music business. We talked about the importance of desire and how in this particular industry, the music industry, regardless of what capacity you're trying to enter it in, if you're trying to do it as a business, then it requires absolute dedication, work ethic, and self-belief. Tony also gives me some great insights into how he got started in the business, like I said, and that's a really inspiring chat. And he talks about things like artist engagement with fans, the industry in general. We talk about the formats for press kits and a ton of other really cool industry-related stuff as well. Tony's doing some really great things in the music industry, and I hope you'll agree that this is yet another interesting and informative episode of Music Business Facts. Anyhow, I'll speak with you at the end of the interview. Please enjoy my conversation with Tony Boden, the head of European touring for Artery Global. Enjoy. So my guest today, ladies and gentlemen, is Mr. Tony Boden. He's from the Artery Global International Talent Agency, and he's the head of European touring. Tony, thanks so much for your time today, mate. It's great to meet you.
No, thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Listen, Tony, I always just like to start by getting you to tell my listeners a little bit about yourself personally and your back history and then what you do in the music business these days.
Okay, so I'm the head of European touring for Artery Global, which is an international booking agency. The company was founded in 2013. We've been growing ever since then. We've got 5 agents, including myself, in the UK who represent artists throughout Europe and the rest of the world. We have our US our US office, which we now have 7 agents with. We have a roster of about 300 different artists, predominantly rock and metal, but we don't really want to pigeonhole ourselves when it comes to genres. So we've got some hip hop acts on the roster. We've got some country acts, singer-songwriters. We've touched on a lot, but so rock and metal does very well for us. So we've got a lot of bands like that. I've been booking now for a good 10 years. Prior to this, I was working with another agency that didn't quite work out. I started up my own company early 2013, and my good friend Trevor, who's the head of Artery Global in the US, he wanted to put the company together and be a fully international booking agency. He wanted the name Artery Global to mean global. So he's not just sitting, somewhere in California just thinking, oh, it's global and you're only doing stuff in the US or wherever. Mm-hmm. So, he eventually bent my ear roll enough to get me to come on board, and that was around mid-2013. And, yeah, we've been growing ever since.
Cool, it's a good story, and bit of your back history, I suppose. A lot of my listeners, they want to break into the music industry, or they're just getting into the music industry. So, can you tell us a little bit where you came back from? You used to be a promoter, is that right?
Yeah, so I started promoting shows when I was around 18. I never did the whole route of getting your friends' bands, putting them on at a local pub. We went in immediately with international touring bands. So the first show we promoted was Nile and Dying Fetus. Did a lot of death metal to begin with. Mm-hmm. And it just came about because I lived in Brighton in the UK. We would be travelling up to London a lot to see all the bands. Like, none of the promoters really wanted to touch the bands that we were listening to. So, there'd be occasions where there'd be as many as like 50 people getting train back down from London after going to a gig getting a train back from London after seeing the show there, getting back to Brighton. And we all, we sat around one night after a few beers, and a friend of mine was close to one of the promoters in Brighton. Every now and again, he gets offered something a little bit more left field. The Nile Dying Fetus show was floated around. There was me and three of my friends that just sat around and decided we'd take a punt. And we looked at costing it out. The band wanted £2,000. We all looked at this and like, okay, well, we can all put in £500 of our own money. Had a deal with the promoter who was going to help with the venue costs, and we didn't start doing it as a money-making exercise. We just wanted to bring the bands to Brighton. I think we all got a bit of a taste for it. Nile actually did okay. I think we made about £30 each, which was nice. So it paid for our beers that night. Then we started putting on a lot more death metal bands. Brighton didn't really have the scene for a lot of the bands that we were bringing down. Some of them did well, some of them lost us quite a lot of money. But that really gave me the taste for it. And I wasn't just into death metal, I was also into a lot of like hardcore, post-hardcore, kind of weird, kind of like noise, progressive music. And other booking agencies saw what I was doing and then decided to start taking a chance with me, even though I was still quite young and relatively inexperienced, and Brighton was still a market that was just kind of getting used to having heavier bands there. In fact, there was one agent who I've done a lot of work with in the past called Jodie Cox, who was one of the first booking agents to properly take a punt with me and let me book a show for Baroness along with a UK band called Capricorns, and it was Baroness's first UK tour. That grew into a great relationship, and then he let me book bands like Isis and Pelican, and that really started developing the scene down there. And I got very fortunate at the time. My old promotions company was called Piercing Eyes, and because there was just like a core group of people that would just come to my shows like week in, week out, I could be reliant that they would come regardless what I did. And there would even be bands where they'd have very little press. They just released a new record, haven't got much going on, but then the people would see the name on the flyer, they would come down regardless, and that way people came to the shows. They would spread the word of mouth, and then we'd always bring the bands back for a second show, which would usually sell out. And yeah, it went on like that until I was offered an internship at an agency, and then I took the plunge and became an agent.
That's a great story, Tony. So it's like a mixture of Maybe a bit of an opportunity, knowing somebody, backing yourself, a lot of things I like to talk about on the show.
Well, years later, and I guess this is where it gets a little more salacious, I found out that the friends I was putting these shows on with, because I had a bit of, just disposable income that I wanted to, I just wanted to do something. I wanted to say, hey, I did this, even if I didn't work in music and I did a job. It's like, well, way back then, remember when we brought those bands down? That was cool. I found out much later that it was because one of my friends wanted to launder some money that he made because he was a drug dealer. So I was like, okay, well, that gave me an opportunity, and I took it, and found out much later that was the reason they were spending silly amounts of money on these death metal bands.
Well, thanks for sharing. I mean, it doesn't necessarily matter where your funding comes from, does it? But look, you talked about money, and we talked about the growth of the heavy music scene worldwide. It's certainly getting popular here in Australia. In fact, some of Australia's biggest bands are, the likes of the Amity Affliction and Parkway Drive. Again, for anyone listening to this that wanted to get into booking acts and maybe becoming a booking agent as a career, it's a personal question, but people want to know this, and so feel free to tell me what you want to tell me. But is there good money in it? Can you make some decent money? Can you make like a good wage where you can live well?
As a booking agent or as a promoter?
Well, either or.
Yeah, I mean, you're taking a risk. It's a gamble, whatever you're going to do. If you're a promoter, you're gambling your money. I mean, you could bring all the bands down. If you don't sell the tickets, you could lose a lot of money. Obviously the rewards are there immediately if it sells really well. The gamble you're taking as a booking agent is kind of very different because you're investing time. Mm-hmm. And depending on how you want to look at money, it's like you can make money back. If you lose it, you're not going to make the time back. And, there have been, lots of cases where you've started working on a project that hasn't worked out. There's lots of reasons why a tour won't work. Maybe finances, illness, pregnancy. There's so many different things, and you just need to kind of budget that time well to make sure that you've got enough artists that are on the road that are going to be bringing your money in, and then kind of taking a risk on a few kind of other, whether it be smaller acts or acts that you take on knowing that there is a bit of history. It could be tough. But sometimes you just want to take a risk. You're like, well, actually, I know it didn't work out for this person or this person, but maybe this time, maybe it could work. Mm.
So if you're not risk averse, it's probably not the career for you, certainly being a promoter. And then if you don't have a lot of time up your sleeve, probably not being a booking agent.
Not really. I mean, depending on what sort of scale you want to do it on. I mean, there are part-time agents. We've got a part-time agent over in the UK who kind of splits between doing his full-time job and then booking on the side. And I commend him for it. I mean, he works within IT, so I mean, he's always on email, and he manages to do it. But he wants to invest his time that he has now into becoming an agent, because ultimately his day job isn't what he wants to be doing for the rest of his life. So he's certainly on the right track to being able to generate enough income to move away from that job and become a full-time agent. But yeah, it's a big time investment, and doing a job like this is something that will take a lot of your time. It's something you have to live into. And I mean, there's a lot of talk at the moment about how, the kind of your mental well-being within this industry is, because a lot of people do get burnt out, and a lot of times, the social life and the business life just blur. I mean, here I am now. It's like, okay, well, I'm the other side of the world. Weather's beautiful. We're going to go for a few beers. We're eating good food. We're going to see some good bands. But as much as this is a trip, this is work. It's like in between each meeting, I'm like making sure that meeting. If it's going to be like, I'm going to start working with this act, start working with this label, start working with this promoter, that's all business, even though you are having a few beers. And then in between those beers, I've got to, be dealing with the terrible kind of time zone that we're in down here, and deal with Europe. And I mean, that's something that I have to say that I'm incredibly impressed with everyone that I've met so far. Like the agents down here, the promoters, managers, and just how they manage to deal with the time differences between local time and Europe, because a lot of the people they're going to be dealing with are in Europe. And I've noticed this, after having a full day of meetings, you have dinner, you settle down, you're in the pub, you're having a beer, all of a sudden Europe wakes up, and then you're just getting inundated with phone calls and emails, and looking at everyone handle that, I'm very, very impressed.
Yeah, very, very cool. And this is a bit of a personal question, but I mean, do you have a family, Tony? I know a lot of people in the music industry, it's a big strain on the family. Would you agree with that?
It is. It's very tough, and I mean, it does cause a lot of stress within relationships. I do have a daughter who I don't live with, and I am in a relationship. It's something that it's hard to understand. I mean, I guess you need to just be honest with the people that you're with. It's like, well, look, this is my job, and there are going to be perks to for both of us, me being in that job. But also there are going to be a lot of, there are going to be a lot of tough times. There are going to be times that I'm going to be, working right through the night. There are going to be times that I'm going to be away a lot. So it is tough. It is very tough to maintain.
Yeah, I guess that occurs a lot across a lot of facets of many employment and jobs these days. So I guess that's just a part of it you've got to deal with, and you've got to have an understanding partner.
Absolutely. And I mean, there is one part of my life that I am very regimented in, and that's I'm a big football fan. And when I'm at the football, that's it. I'm in flight mode. No one's getting in touch with me. Like,
I'm a football tragic as well. But what happens when? Because I know the internal struggle I have when my team's playing and there's a gig on. How do you balance that, or do you just put your gigs around football finals and things like that?
It's entirely about football. And I mean, I've come out to Australia for like 9 days. Last weekend, the weekend just gone, was an international break, so my team wasn't playing. My team does play on Saturday, and I made it so that I'm going to be flying back from Brisbane to London. I'm going to get into London at 7 a.m. after a 30-hour flight, and I'm going to go straight to the football.
And just quickly, who's your team, mate?
Brighton and Hove Albion.
Excellent. All right then, Tony. Well, listen, it's a great story so far. I guess what I'd really like to get from you is just any solid advice for anyone listening to this that would like to get into either concert promotion or becoming a booking agent. Can you give them like some solid strategy or takeaway?
You need to want it. You need to want it more than anything. It's not a casual job. It's not, although people can perceive it as being, oh, that's quite a cool job. And I have this with my brothers all the time. They just think I sit in the office, send a couple of emails, go to a gig, then I fly here, there, and everywhere. It's not. And, you are on call a lot of the time. You need to be able to problem solve whatever, the situation is. You could be anywhere in the world. Something could happen. You get that phone call. You need to be prepared for all eventualities. There's been kind of more kind of like ridiculous, things happen over the last few years, but now it gets to a point where you can't be surprised by anything. Whether we've had artists, get into altercations on the road. One guy cut a guy's ear off when they got into an altercation in Sweden.
In the same band? In the same band,
yeah. So he kind of sent the guy packing to hospital and continued the tour, and then they continued as a three-piece, which became quite a problem when it came to the bigger paying shows at the end, which were festivals that were expecting the band to play a big psychedelic set, and they wanted to play a stripped back set, and that was a big problem because we knew if they didn't get the money from that festival, then this would have been a big loss for them. And amazingly enough, the band got to the venue, and the venue managed to find not only a guitarist that could play all the psychedelic stuff, but also a keyboardist to make the sound even bigger. And they actually released the album as a live album that sold very, very well. So that's a kind of just an instance of just having to problem solve. The poor guy actually went to hospital, left the band, and that was that. But these things do happen. Like some bands, I've had it before where they just don't want to play shows on the day of the show. I had one band had a sold out show in Germany, like last show of their tour. Everyone, it was all looking really good, and they just couldn't be bothered to play, so they had to cancel a sold out show, and then had to pay for their own hotels. It cost them more money. They can move their flights. Sometimes you just, regardless of what your argument is, people aren't going to take your advice, and they make their own decisions. Well, going back to the original question about people that want to do it, it's.
Well, hang on a sec. First of all, did the guy get his ear sewn back on?
Yeah. He gets his sewn back on. Yeah, no, they've got good medical staff in Sweden. So I hate to think how much he paid for it, but yeah, it was fine.
And before we go into your advice, again, I suppose a couple of questions popped into my head as you were talking. Are you on communication 24/7? Like, do you ever turn your phone off and your email's always on, or do you have to take that break?
It's tough. Sometimes it's difficult to turn off. Like, I find it very difficult to relax. I'm one of those people that needs to stay busy all the time. So when I'm busy, I feel that I'm more relaxed than if I'm just sat at home, ignoring my phone. One incident, as I've already mentioned, I will turn my phone off when I'm at football. Like, I refuse to do that. But yeah, obviously on the way to the ground, on the way home, like, I'm back online. I try to stick to strict, well, not strict office hours, but I like to kind of have a routine, because at the end of the day, as much as this encompasses a lot of your life, you are still a person, and this is just a job. So you do make up your own hours. Generally, people in the industry within London and probably all of Europe they're not early birds, and why would you be? If you're going to be going out to shows every night, getting back home midnight, 1 a.m., you're not going to be wanting to get into the office at 9. There's no point. So I've got loose office hours of between, I'll get into the office between about 9 and 10:30, and I'll be leaving the office around 7:30, 8ish at night, have some dinner, and then I'll be on email until about midnight. But I'm very strict with my weekends. Like, I refuse to do any work on Saturdays, Sundays, depending on how much I've got to do. I will do things, but you need to kind of like set some time aside for yourself, because otherwise you do burn out, and when you're burnt out, you're not going to enjoy what you're doing. And if you're not going to enjoy what you're doing, don't do it, because if you're not getting any enjoyment out of doing something like this, there's no point.
Great advice. Work is life, really, isn't it? Because you do it for so much. And that story where you said where there was a sold-out show and then they just stopped playing, I assume you don't get paid then as well, right? Because I'm assuming the business model for agencies is you work on commission.
Yeah, that's correct. Sometimes, regardless of what you do, you could bring fantastic offers to the table. If they don't want to do them, they don't want to do them. But yeah, if everything is commission based, and this goes back to the risk that you're taking with the time you're putting in, until that tour's played, you're not paid for it. So you could be working on a huge arena tour for 6 months' time, even 18 months' time, and you just kind of set, and then you kind of you don't want to kind of like budget your kind of finances or your time too much, because you don't know if that's going to play, and if those shows don't happen, you're not paid, and no one's there to pay you as a result. So yeah.
How do you mitigate your risk, Tony? I know you can take out insurance for bad weather, and you can take out public liability insurance, you can take out non-appearance insurance. Are they the types of things? Is there any other things that you want to mention?
I've lived very smart throughout, and I've set this. I've started booking from the ground level up. So when I set my own company up, I had no money. I was booking relatively small bands that weren't bringing in huge amounts of income, and I just got very creative with how I survived during that time. I became a bit of a blagger, you find ways of making these things work, and it's being prepared to be able to kind of take that risk. And if you've got no tours during a period of time, you need to make sure that the money that you've made for the rest of the year is going to be able to see you through. So I've been very, very sensible with my finances and my kind of lifestyle, getting to a point where you are making more consistent income. And then when that's consistent, right, you need to make X amount each month, and then you start building on that and building and growing and growing and growing. And we've seen everyone at the company do the same. You're not going to come on board being a booking agent, booking a band like Parkway Drive. You need to take that band and grow them. I mean, I promoted Parkway Drive years ago when I was still promoting in Brighton, and I think I paid them about £150. There was about 80 people at the show, and they've probably got about that in their entourage now. But you need to start somewhere. The agent at the time, who is still booking them now, they took the risk on booking the band back then. Yeah. So like they were making those little fees, but now they're headlining festivals, they're playing arenas. Now they're making their money on that. Yeah. And that's fantastic for it's fantastic to see Parkway Drive stay loyal to their agents because they're the ones that took the risk at the beginning. They worked very hard. They saw what they could be capable of, and now here they are achieving everything they set out to do.
Yeah, massive. And thanks for sharing that. That's great. But what I actually meant was, is there a way you can mitigate artists not showing up and cutting off ears and getting involved in drugs and disappearing with groupies and all that kind of thing?
No, no, you can't. Again,
so that's part of the risk.
Absolutely. Yeah. You don't know if you're going to send a band down to a festival and then it's going to be rained off. You know, if a band member wakes up late, misses their flight, and as a result they can't perform the show. There's things that you can help try and prevent. But yeah, sometimes things will happen.
So back to the question I asked you just quickly while we wrap this section of the interview up. Any takeaways for any kid or young person, or anyone really for that matter, listening that would like to maybe try and do what you're doing?
Again, you need to want it. You need to enjoy it. You need to really love the music. You need to just kind of feel it and know that this is what you want to do, because you're not going to get any thanks. It's going to take a long time for you to, get your roster together, that you're making enough money that you're going to be rewarded financially. So you just really, really need to want it.
Yeah, like anything in life, hey, it's got to have that burning passion and desire to achieve. Tony, if there's an artist listening to this podcast now and they wanted to try and get in touch with you, they wanted to impress you, what type of attributes are you looking for from acts that you want to work with? How would I sort of impress you if I was a manager or was in a band?
Certainly the music. That's first and foremost. There's so many different channels that artists can use these days, all of their social medias, whether that be Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Be on everything, be active with everything, engage with your fans. At the moment, artists have now got more options than ever before to be connecting directly with their audience. And it's just about staying on top of all of those things. Find your audience and then develop them. You can do it yourselves. I manage a band as well, and they're very good at going straight to their core audiences. Like, they've got a huge YouTube following because they keep providing content that their fans want to see. It's not all about the hard sell, like, we've got a gig coming up, buy a ticket, we've got a new record coming up. It's not all about that. Numbers are a good thing for us to see, because at the same time, if we're going to be looking at picking up a band to book, then we're going to need to have the ammo there to sell to the promoters. It's difficult to sell to a promoter if there's nothing there. If there's no release, if there's no traction online, if they can't see anything there, then why would they buy it? And then it becomes a real tough sell. And then even if they've actually bought the show and it plays, if no one comes to the show and then there's nothing that they can see they're going to be able to follow up on, unless there's going to be a new record or they're going to get some radio play, then effectively you've just had a promoter lose money just so you could play a show. Those are going to be some of the things that we do look for, just how it's presented, how we see that it's being engaged with. If you've got, say, 3,000 Facebook likes, but then you've got 2,500 people engaging with the page, and you've got high numbers of just the percentage of fans that are engaging, that's way better for us to look at than someone who's got 1 million likes who's got about 500 people engaging. So you can help engage with your audiences and keep it up. Keep the music, make sure the music's best it possibly can. Send as much music as you can.
How should they send it to you, Tony? Are you a fan of press kits, for instance? And then the second part of that question, should they be digital, or do you still like physical stuff? How do you like to receive the music?
Digitally. I used to insist upon CDs and having something tangible there. I used to be a big CD hoarder, but I don't even own a CD player these days. Try and make sure. I know that some people use SoundCloud a lot or Bandcamp. I'm a big fan of Spotify, and Spotify also can be monetized, although not hugely. You're sending your money out. You're sending the tracks out that people can listen to as either for free or as part of their subscription, and then you can make a little bit of money back. But I would insist on everything being digitally. If you're going to send a parcel through of CDs, but we just look at that as being extra work. You've got to put it onto your hard drive, you rip it, then you sit down and listen to it. If it's a link, you can send it through straight away. We can listen to it, and we can make a faster decision.
Yeah. And Tony, on what you were talking about before, let's say I'm in one territory and I've got things happening here, people are coming to shows, there's obviously some momentum, but there's nothing happening in another territory. For instance, an Australian band that's maybe doing well here and they've been touring hard here. How can I get that break and convince you to help me get overseas, to get to the UK or to get to another territory?
It's a tough one. I mean, whether you're going to be looking at signing with a label, whether you've got management that wants to help start promoting over in other countries, whether you want to take a risk and just tour. There's lots of different ways of going about it. I don't think there's one way that works better than another. It really depends upon who the artist is, because there's so many different variables to really consider. And I mean, we see it a lot where we've got artists that are worth huge numbers in one territory and it not work in others. There was a band that we've got that we're working with, who are from Sweden, and they were worth great numbers in Sweden, and then they were worth decent numbers in mainland Europe. And I said to them, well, what about touring in Norway? I'm like, we've never been to Norway. So it's right next door. So, let's just take a risk. And, we go out, we play for lower show fees than they would have really liked to. And we played the right rooms to the right promoters. Those rooms all sold out. And then they were coming back for festivals. And now they're coming back and playing the rooms that they want to be playing for the fees that they want to be playing for. So, it's so many variables. It's hard to really give you.
I sense it's a bit like what your story was about. You back yourself. You believe in what you're doing. And I was lucky enough to interview Michael Browning, who was AC/DC's manager, and he said, they would tour Australia and build up their war chest, and then go over to the UK where no one knew who they were, and that's where they spent all their money, and then they had to come back to Australia. That kind of thing where you really just put yourself out there and have a crack.
Absolutely, and a lot of Australian artists they do that. I guess it's kind of different mentality in the UK and the US, and we work with a lot of artists from both those markets, that they become a little more spoiled because of the touring realities in their markets. So in Australia, people, the Australian bands are used to travelling a lot. We know that there's like long drives between each town. So, you're going to have to be driving, 10, 11 hours just to get to the next town. So you're going to be, that you're going to be hungry to be playing those shows. It's a long way for someone to go. And as a result, if you're hungrier, then you're going to be putting your all into it. And when it's the time that they want to take the leap to be touring in Europe, then they want to do the work. They want to put their money in, and they invest an awful lot of money bringing their bands over and touring within the European market. When it comes to UK bands or US bands where we get them offers to play Australia, they generally don't like making that investment, and it's because they've been spoiled by their home markets. But yeah, I mean, there needs to be the time and the financial investment, and again, just the hunger to really, really want it.
Yeah. And how important is the live show, especially, I suppose, in the heavier music? You've got to be able to obviously back it up live, forget about the auto-tune and the kick drum correct and all that stuff in the Pro Tools session.
Well, if the auto-tune's going to give you a better show, then I'm not adverse to it. But yeah, the show needs to be there.
Yeah. Of course. All right, so while we're on it, what if someone's listening to this and they want to get in touch with you? Are you one of these guys that's freely available to give out your email addresses, or are you hard to find? Or
we on our website, arteryglobal.com, where we have a contact site. We're always open to listening to new submissions. As I mentioned earlier, we've got 5 agents in the UK. We're all looking at growing our rosters. Same in the US. If it's the right band for us, we generally listen to as many submissions as we get sent through.
Oh, that's great. Tony, what common mistakes do you see artists make when they're trying to impress people like you and they're trying to do music professionally?
Let's try and think of a good example. Over arrogance is one that's always kind of like puts me off. One where they don't appreciate who you are. We know that we're a smaller boutique agency, And there has been, you know, artists say, "Oh, we've spoken to so and so at this massive agency and so here," and we're like, "Okay, well, great. Well, you can deal with them. See you later." You know, over arrogance, maybe just if you don't want to work. I mean, generally at conferences, you're here because you want to showcase your music. You want to get out to bigger audiences. You know, you want to get out. You want to tour. You want to impress. So for artists to do it, I mean, I don't know, maybe to really make a mistake, I'm really just trying to think of like a good example of when someone's really just rubbed me up the wrong way during one of these things. But everyone wants to try so hard, and they're out to impress at the conferences. So, you know, it's everyone's being sincere, and I guess that's what you really need to do: be sincere. And you know, I had a meeting with a band this morning, and you know, they were very new. They're certainly not ready to be touring internationally. They're getting, you know, finding their feet touring in Australia. But I mean, I'm happy like to be speaking with acts on the road at conferences like here to see if, you know, there's anything we can do to suggest. But I mean, if someone's going to suggest something, you know, try and take heed. And you know, if it's someone who's, you know, working within the industry and that's how they've made their living, then, you know, by and large they know what they're doing to a certain extent anyway. So if they have any advice, then, you know, just try and take everything on board.
Mm-hmm. No, that's cool. And that thing about you said about being arrogant is absolutely true, because, you know, you like working with people that you like, right? You don't want to work with someone who's an amazing musician but you know, an asshole to deal with.
Depends how much money they're making.
On the thing of money, how do you see the state of the business? Like you said before, that your agency is growing rapidly, and you're like quite surprised. Is it a healthy time to be, you know, a musician and a songwriter and a touring artist?
By and large, like throughout Europe, certainly, like more people are going to shows than ever before, and it's been growing. Certainly over the last 10 years, even like my parents go out and check out local bands now, and, you know, send me demos of bands they've liked. And in that respect, you know, we know that the audience is there. At the same time, you know, there's a lot of oversaturation when it comes to festivals. We've seen over the last few years festivals being cancelled, larger festivals struggling to sell the tickets that they once sold, a real lack of headliners. I mean, the live music industry is strong. You know, we've had a fantastic year, and we're going to continue to keep growing on, you know, the where we're at with the agency. But it is good. But at the same time, yeah, the top is becoming more and more saturated, and you need to know where your fan base is, how to grow on that fan base. You know, whether that's going to be with live touring, or, you know, through releasing, you know, more music. Yeah, it is generally a good time if you want to put the work in.
Yeah, okay, cool. And what about when if we can talk a little bit about quickly the income stream. So obviously you've got your live performance, and if you've got a following, you can capitalise there. And then there's the merchandise. I had a manager on here. He was a big thing on meet and greets and selling those.
We've actually just set up our own ticketing company that specialise in VIP meet and greets. And if you're offering value to your fans, then we see no reason why you can't do this at any level. Mm-hmm. You know, whether you're playing to, you know, 10,000 people or 150 people, you know, as long as you're going to be adding value and it's going to be worth that ticket price. Absolutely. You know, you can be closer to your fans. We've done it with bands that just wanted to do 10 in 100 capacity rooms, and, you know, those 10 tickets sell, you know, include it with part of the merch bundle, and everyone can make a little bit of money, and the fans get closer to the bands that, you know, they want to be close to. So, well, I certainly see value in that.
Cool. Well, listen, Tony, thanks so much for chatting with me today. It's been really cool to meet you, and you're certainly very lively and sprightly for someone that's just got off a plane from the UK. Before we finish up, do you just have any parting words of wisdom, or was there a question I should have asked you that I didn't, or anything for the listeners before we wrap it up?
I think, yeah, if I was a little less jet lagged, I'd have a better parting word of wisdom. So, I mean, just... Yeah, I'm not going to say what I was going to say, but no, it's been a pleasure, and if you want to be, you know, if you really truly believe in yourself that you can make this work, then, you know, go ahead and make it work. I mean, I worked at a terrible agency, and I was left, kind of really disillusioned by the whole thing. And I got myself, dusted myself off, and started Artery Global with Trevor, and we're now at a position where we've got about 300 artists on our roster. Amazing. So part of that is definitely down to me being quite stubborn, but just hold in there and just want it.
No, look, thanks heaps for that, Tony, and that's a very, very common theme where a lot of my guests have on the show. There's that whole believe in yourself and that tenacity and never give up, and when you get knocked down, get back up again, and all those cliches, but it all seems to be true, and all of these successful people like yourself all say the same thing. So thanks for sharing that, mate, and have a great Big Sound.
Yeah, sorry, I've thought of something that may be a better line to sign off on, but don't worry about making mistakes, because everyone's going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Mm-hmm. Just learn from them. Sure. Always learn from your mistakes.
Tony Boden from the Artery Global International Talent Agency. That's quite a mouthful. Thanks so much for joining me, mate, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
We're shaking hands. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Tony Boden from Artery Global. If you're ever thinking about touring Europe or the UK, why not look up Tony over at arteryglobal.com. And of course, as always, all of the show notes are available over at musicbusinessfacts.com, as is my free PDF, which I've been doing recently, where I give you Tony's top 5 music business tips and takeaways. So you can go and check that out on Tony's page at Music Business Facts, as I said. If you like the show, I would dead set love to hear from you guys. You can always get in touch with me at facebook.com/musicbusinessfacts. And if you'd like to contribute to help me produce even more content like this and keep the show going, you can always leave me a tip at paypal.me/musicbusinessfacts. And as I always say, if you're looking for a way of allowing people to send you money, paypal.me is a really cool way to do that. Anyhow, on the next episode of Music Business Facts, I'll be speaking with a guy called Mr. Phil Bauer, and Phil is the Director of New Business Development over at the original digital distribution platform CD Baby. So that's going to be a great one if you want to continue your education on the whole digital distribution processes and strategy, so keep an eye out for that one. But until the next episode, I'd like to leave you with this quote from Mr. Peter Drucker, and Peter said, "Whenever you see a successful business, someone once made a courageous decision." Until next time, guys, this is Rodney Holder signing off for musicbusinessfacts.com.
You've been listening to the Music Business Facts podcast. For more essential music business tips and information, visit musicbusinessfacts.com.